I still remember the evening I proposed to Megan. It was a warm June night on a quiet stretch of Myrtle Beach, with the sun slowly melting into the ocean like liquid gold. She cried happy tears. She said yes, and I believed with everything in me that she was the woman I would grow old with. But standing in that restaurant 14 months later, watching her laugh at me while another man's arm rested casually on her waist, I realized I never really knew who she was. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city in the comments below. If you have ever had someone underestimate you, make you feel like you were not enough, hit that like button right now. This one is for you. And if you are new here, subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because this story changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and my own worth. Now, let me take you back to where it all started to fall apart. It was a Tuesday evening in October, and I had just come home with what I thought was the best news of my career. I was 32 years old, working as a project manager at Henderson Construction, a mid-sized company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had been in the industry for 10 years, starting as a laborer, hauling materials on job sites, slowly working my way up through sheer determination and countless overtime hours. Megan and I had been living together for almost 2 years in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a local agency, and we had our wedding planned for the following June. That October evening I came home carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorites, and a bottle of wine. I had just been promoted with a 15% raise. For the first time in my career, I felt like I was finally getting somewhere. I could already picture Megan's face lighting up when I told her. Maybe we could finally start saving for that house she always talked about. When I walked through the door, Megan was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands, smiling at the screen. She was typing something, and there was a softness in her expression I had not seen in a while. I stood there for a moment, holding the flowers, waiting for her to notice me. She glanced up. "Oh hey, you are home early. I have news," I said, holding out the sunflowers. "I got promoted. Senior project manager, 15% raise." She took the flowers without really looking at them. "That is nice, babe." Then she went back to her phone. I stood there, the wine bottle growing warm in my hand. "I thought maybe we could go out and celebrate. That Italian place you like, I am kind of tired," she said, still typing. "Maybe we can just order in." I tried not to let the disappointment show. I told myself she was probably stressed from work. It happens. But then she asked me something that stuck in my mind long after that night. "Hey, do you know how much a senior real estate developer makes? Like the really successful ones?" I blinked. "I do not know. Why, I met this guy at a networking event last week. Derek Lawson. He is completely self-made, started from nothing, and now he is developing that new complex downtown, the one with the rooftop gardens." She looked up, her eyes bright in a way they had not been when I mentioned my promotion. "He is fascinating." I nodded slowly. "Sounds like quite a guy." "He is. You should meet him sometime. You could learn a lot." I did not say anything. I just put the wine in the refrigerator and told myself I was overreacting. Over the following weeks, Derek's name became a regular feature in our conversations. At first it was subtle. Megan would mention something he said at a meeting or some business philosophy he shared with her. Then the comparisons started, always casual, always wrapped in innocence. Derek said his first year in business he made more than most people make in 5 years. Is that not incredible? Derek thinks people who work for others their whole lives are just afraid to take risks. One evening she looked around our apartment with a slight frown. "This place feels so small sometimes." I saw pictures of the apartments in Derek's building. They have floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the whole city. I reminded her that we were saving for a house, that I had plans to eventually start my own company once I had enough experience and capital. She laughed, but it was not a kind laugh. "Your own company, George, with what money, what connections? Sometimes I think you are just dreaming instead of actually doing something." I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I pushed it down. By the 6th week, Megan started having evening meetings more frequently. She would dress up nicer than usual, perfume I did not recognize, heels she never wore for me. When I asked where she was going, she said she was expanding her network for her career. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. One night I found a receipt in her coat pocket. A restaurant I had never heard of. $214 for 2 people. When I asked about it, she said it was a lunch meeting with a colleague named Stephanie. I did not know any Stephanie at her office, but I let it go. My best friend Ray came over that weekend. We had known each other since high school, and he had a way of seeing through things that I often missed. He watched Megan leave for another one of her evening appointments, then turned to me with concern written across his face. "Man, she seems different lately." "You sure everything is okay between you two?" I shrugged. "She is just stressed with work. You know how it is." Ray did not look convinced, but he did not push. I wish he had. The truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deep you try to bury it. Mine came up on a Saturday night in early December. Megan was taking a shower, and her phone was on the coffee table. I was not planning to look at it. I had never been the jealous type. But then the screen lit up with a notification, and the preview showed just enough to stop my heart. A message from someone saved as D. "Cannot wait to see you Monday. Wear that black dress again." My hands were trembling as I picked up the phone. I knew I should not look, but something inside me had already crossed that line. I scrolled up through the conversation, and what I found made my stomach turn. "You deserve so much more than what you have now. I can give you that." And Megan's response, "I know. Sometimes I wonder why I settled." I was still holding the phone when she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her wet hair dripping onto her shoulders. She saw me, saw what I was holding, and her expression shifted from surprise to anger in an instant. "Are you going through my phone? That is a complete violation of my privacy, George. Who is D?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "Who is sending you messages like this?" She grabbed the phone from my hand. "And he is just being friendly." That is how people talk in his world. It does not mean anything. Being friendly, he wants you to wear a specific dress for him. He says he can give you more than what you have now. You are being paranoid. Tears started forming in her eyes. "I cannot believe you do not trust me. After everything we have been through," she cried. She told me I was insecure, that I was letting my own inadequacies poison our relationship. She promised to keep more distance from Derek. And because I loved her, because I wanted so desperately to believe that the future we had planned was still possible, I apologized. I was the one who apologized. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Megan seemed more attentive, more present. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings and asked about my day when I came home. I started to believe that maybe I had overreacted after all. Then came the networking event at her company, and everything unraveled. It was a Friday evening at a downtown hotel, chandeliers and champagne, and people in expensive suits making small talk about money. Megan had invited me, said it would be good for me to meet some of her colleagues. I wore my best blazer and tried to look like I belonged. And then I saw him. Derek Lawson was taller than me by several inches, with slicked back dark hair and a watch that probably cost more than my car. He moved through the crowd like he owned the room, shaking hands and flashing a smile that never quite reached his eyes. When he spotted Megan, his entire demeanor changed. He walked over to us with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. "Megan," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "you look absolutely stunning tonight." Then he turned to me, barely concealing his dismissal. "Oh, so you are the fiancée. Megan has told me some things about you." I extended my hand. "George? Nice to finally meet you." His handshake was brief, perfunctory. He immediately turned back to Megan, placing his hand on her lower back as he leaned in to speak. "You know my offer still stands. Anytime you want to come work for my company, the door is wide open. I could really use someone with your talents." Megan laughed, actually reached out and touched his arm. "Maybe someday, when the time is right." I stood there like a ghost, watching my fiancée flirt with another man 3 feet away from me. The car ride home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Then, I could not hold it in anymore. "The way he talks to you, the way he touches you, it is not professional, Megan. It is not appropriate." She sighed like I was a child who did not understand basic arithmetic. "This is why you will never be anything more than a project manager, George. You do not understand how the real world works. Networking is everything. Networking does not mean letting another man put his hands on you in front of your fiancé." Her voice turned cold. "He was not doing anything wrong. You are just intimidated because he is more successful than you will ever be." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. But I did not say another word. I was starting to realize that the woman sitting next to me was not the same woman I had proposed to on that beach. 2 weeks later, I found out just how right I was. I left work early that day. One of my projects had finished ahead of schedule and I thought I would surprise Megan with dinner at her favorite restaurant. I even made a reservation, asked for a quiet table by the window. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:30, planning to call her and ask her to meet me there. But when I looked through the front window, I froze. Megan was already inside. She was sitting at a corner table, tucked away from the main dining room, and sitting across from her, holding her hand on top of the white tablecloth, was Derek Lawson. She was laughing at something he said, leaning toward him with an intimacy that hit me like a physical blow. He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She did not pull away. I do not remember walking through the door. I do not remember crossing the restaurant. I just remember standing at their table, looking down at them, feeling like I was watching my own life collapse from somewhere outside my body. Megan looked up. For one brief second, I saw panic flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder, more defiant. Derek did not even have the decency to remove his hand from hers. He just smiled like I was an amusing interruption. "So this is a business meeting," I heard myself say. "George, what are you doing here?" Megan's voice was sharp. "I was going to surprise you. Looks like I am the one who got surprised." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Look, buddy, maybe you should just head home. Megan and I are discussing her future." I kept my eyes on Megan. Her future. What about our future? The wedding. Megan stood up slowly, smoothing down her dress, that black dress Derek had asked her to wear. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost clinical, like she was explaining something to someone who could not quite grasp the obvious. "George, we need to talk. I have been thinking lately that maybe we rushed into this engagement. Because of him." She tilted her head slightly. "Because of you. You have no ambition. You are content with being average. I want more than this, George. I want more than you can give me. I have given you everything I have." And then she said it. The words that would echo in my head for months to come. She laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that cut right through me. "That is exactly the problem, is it not? Everything you have is not enough." She crossed her arms. "You think you are my only option? Look around, George. I could have anyone I want." The restaurant seemed to go silent around us. I stood there looking at this woman I had loved, this woman I had planned to spend my life with, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. Slowly, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the engagement ring. I had been carrying it because she did not like wearing it to networking events. "Too flashy," she said. "Might give the wrong impression." I placed it on the table right between the wine glasses. "You are right," I said. My voice was steady, calmer than I expected. "You do have options, and so do I." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Megan say something to Derek, and then they both laughed. They laughed. The first night alone in that apartment was the longest of my life. I sat on the couch where Megan used to sit, staring at the blank television screen, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. She did not come home that night. The next morning, she showed up with Derek's driver waiting outside, and she packed her things with the efficiency of someone who had been planning this for a while. "I will send someone for the rest," she said at the door, not quite meeting my eyes. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." I watched her leave without saying a word. Ray showed up that evening with a six-pack and a bag of takeout. He did not offer empty platitudes or tell me I was better off. He just sat with me in the silence, and when I finally spoke, he listened. "Maybe she was right," I said, peeling the label off my bottle. "Maybe I am just average. Maybe I am never going to be anything more than what I am right now." Ray shook his head. "You know what the difference is between you and some guy like Derek? You actually earned everything you have. You started hauling concrete when you were 22 years old. You worked your way up through blood and sweat. That is not average, George. That is character." He took a long drink. "Megan was never chasing success. She was chasing money, and there is a big difference." I did not believe him that night, but his words planted a seed that would eventually grow. 3 days later, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was from a man named Harold Patterson, owner of a small resort about 40 miles outside the city. A hurricane had damaged most of his property 6 months earlier, and he needed someone to oversee the complete reconstruction. He had contacted Henderson Construction, but they turned him down. The project was too small, too far from the city, not worth their time. Mr. Patterson had worked with me on a smaller job 2 years ago, and he remembered how I handled the project. He was calling to ask if I knew anyone who might be able to help. I stood at my window looking out at the Charlotte skyline, and I heard Megan's voice in my head. Your own company, with what money, what connections, Mr. Patterson, I said. What if I told you I could handle it myself? There was a pause on the line. You have your own company, not yet, but I will by the end of this week. I used the money I had been saving for the wedding. Every dollar that was supposed to go toward flowers and catering and a honeymoon I would never take. I filed the paperwork, got my contractor's license in order, and by Friday afternoon, Steadfast Construction officially existed. Ray was my first hire. He had been running his own electrical business for years, and he agreed to partner with me on the Patterson project. I reached out to every skilled tradesman I had met over the past decade, the ones who took pride in their work, the ones Henderson had overlooked or undervalued. By the end of the month, I had a crew of 8. The Patterson project introduced me to Audrey. She was the architect Mr. Patterson had hired to redesign the resort, and she was nothing like anyone I had expected. The first time I met her, she was standing in the middle of the construction site in jeans and a flannel shirt, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, arguing with a supplier about the quality of their lumber. You cannot build something beautiful with substandard materials, she was saying when I walked up. I do not care what the invoice says. This is not what we ordered. I introduced myself and she shook my hand firmly. I heard you just started your company. That takes real courage. Most people spend their whole lives talking about doing something like this. I did not have much of a choice, I admitted. Sometimes life pushes you off a cliff, and you either learn to fly or you hit the ground. She smiled, and there was something warm in it, something genuine. Well then, let us make sure you fly. Working with Audrey was different from anything I had experienced before. She asked my opinion, and actually listened to the answers. She respected my expertise without ever making me feel like I needed to prove myself. When we disagreed, she discussed it with me as an equal, not as someone she needed to manage or manipulate. One evening, about 3 months into the project, I was still on site long after everyone else had gone home. I was reviewing blueprints under the temporary lights when I heard footsteps approaching. Audrey appeared, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You know, she said, handing me one of the cups. Megan must have been completely out of her mind to let you go. I looked up surprised. You know about that, small town adjacent. News travels. She sat down on an overturned crate nearby. Her loss, genuinely. I did not know what to say, so I just took a sip of the coffee. It was exactly how I liked it. 6 months after I walked out of that restaurant, the Patterson Resort held its grand reopening. The local paper ran a story about the restoration, complete with photos of the new buildings and an interview with Mr. Patterson, who could not stop praising the work Steadfast Construction had done. That article led to 3 more projects, then 5 more. By the 8-month mark, I had 10 full-time employees and a reputation for delivering quality work on time and on budget. And then the news about Derek broke. Ray was the one who showed me. We were having lunch at a diner near one of our job sites when he nearly choked on his sandwich. George, you need to see this. He handed me his phone. The headline read, Local developer arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Derek Lawson, it turned out, was not a developer at all. He was a con artist running an elaborate Ponzi scheme. The luxury complex he claimed to be building downtown did not exist. The investments he had collected from dozens of people had been funneled into his personal accounts. The women he dated, the connections he cultivated, all of it was designed to find new targets for his scam. I read the article twice, then handed the phone back to Ray. She left you for a con man, Ray said. A literal criminal. I did not feel vindicated. I did not feel satisfied. I just felt tired and maybe a little sad for everyone Derek had fooled, including Megan. A week later, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I had not deleted. George, I made a terrible mistake. Derek was not who I thought he was. Can we please talk? I did not respond. The next day, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaky, broken in ways I had never heard before. George, I am so sorry. I was blind. I was stupid. He took everything from me. I quit my job to work for his company that never existed. I gave him money. I lost it all. She paused and I could hear her crying. You were always the real thing. I was too blind to see it. Please give me another chance. I love you. I always loved you. I listened to that message sitting in my truck outside a job site, watching my crew work on a building that existed because I had the courage to bet on myself. Then I called her back. Megan, I got your messages. George. The hope in her voice was painful to hear. Thank God. I was so stupid. I know that now. We can start over, we can, I forgive you. You do, so we can try again. We can, I forgive you, I repeated. But I do not want you back. Silence on the other end. What we had died that night in the restaurant, I continued. And honestly, I am grateful it did, because it made me become someone I never would have been if I had stayed. But I love you. I have always loved you. No, Megan. You loved what you thought I could give you. When you believed someone else could give you more, you walked away without looking back. That is not love. That is convenience. I took a breath. I am not anyone's backup plan. Not anymore. I ended the call and sat there for a long moment, feeling something I had not felt in months. Freedom. That evening I asked Audrey to have dinner with me. She raised an eyebrow. Took you long enough to ask. I needed to close the old chapter first, I said. Completely. We went to a small diner, nothing fancy, just good food and comfortable conversation. Audrey ordered pancakes at 8 in the evening, and I found myself laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. What is so funny? She asked. Nothing, I said. Just that this feels right. No games, no pretending, just real. She smiled. Real is good. Real is the only thing that lasts. Healing does not happen overnight. There were still nights when I would wake up at 3 in the morning, Megan's words echoing in my head. You think you are my only option. I would lie there in the darkness, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. But slowly, day by day, project by project, I rebuilt myself along with those buildings. I learned to separate Megan's judgment from my own self-worth. Not being enough for her did not mean I was not enough. It meant she was not the right person to recognize what I had to offer. Her inability to see my value said everything about her vision and nothing about my worth. The work helped. Every completed project was proof that I could create something meaningful. Every satisfied client was confirmation that my skills, my dedication, my character, these things mattered. Ray reminded me constantly of how far I had come from hauling materials in the summer heat to running my own company. And then there was Audrey. She did not try to fix me or rush my healing. She simply showed up consistently and genuinely, letting me know through her actions that I was worth showing up for. That was something Megan had never done. 1 year after that night in the restaurant, I stood in front of the Patterson Resort. It had become a destination featured in travel magazines and booked solid through the next summer. Mr. Patterson had just referred me to a developer looking to build a boutique hotel on the coast. Audrey stood beside me, her hand in mine. Do you ever think about her? She asked. Sometimes, I admitted, not with anger anymore. Sometimes I almost feel grateful. If she had not said what she said, if she had not walked away, I might have spent my whole life playing it safe, working for someone else, dreaming about a company I never had the courage to start. I looked at the building in front of us, solid and beautiful. She did not break me. She set me free. I heard later that Megan moved to another city trying to start over. I hope she finds whatever she is looking for. Not the designer lifestyle she chased with Derek, but something real. Something that does not require her to become someone she is not. Audrey and I got engaged 6 months later. Ray is going to be my best man. The wedding will be small, just the people who matter in a venue I am building myself. Megan said I thought I was her only option. She laughed when I walked away, certain she was trading up for something better. But here is the thing about options. Sometimes the one you discard turns out to be the one you should have chosen all along. I proved her right. I was not her only option. But I turned out to be the option she lost forever. So if someone ever makes you feel like you are not enough, if someone laughs at your dreams or dismisses your worth, remember this. Their inability to see what you are capable of does not diminish your potential. It just means they are not the right person to witness your rise. You are not someone's backup plan. You are not a consolation prize. You are someone's answer to a question they have been asking their whole life. You just have to find the person who knows how to ask. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone underestimate you only for life to prove them wrong? I read every single one, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. Subscribe if you have not already and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Thank you for being here, for listening, for being part of this community. I hope you carry this with you, No matter who walks away, no matter who doubts you, your story is not over. The best chapters might still be ahead. Take care of yourself, believe in your own value, and I will see you in the next one.